There is a specific moment most people never talk about. Not the falling in love, not the breakup. The quieter one, where you're sitting somewhere ordinary, doing something ordinary, and you realize you don't know what you actually want, not because you're indecisive, but because it's been so long since you wanted anything that wasn't shaped by what someone else needed, that the question itself feels foreign, like searching for a voice that slowly stopped speaking. And the strangest part is that you can't identify the moment it went quiet. It didn't happen all at once. It happened the way all important losses happen, gradually, then completely. While you were busy calling it love, you didn't notice it happening. You were present for all of it. Every compromise, every adjustment, every moment you softened an opinion or swallowed a need. And none of it felt like loss. It felt like devotion. It felt like proof of how seriously you took the relationship, how deeply you were capable of feeling. The more of yourself you set aside, the more certain you were that this was what love required, that this was what it meant to truly let someone in. Jung would say, that's exactly the confusion. What most people experience as deep intimacy, that feeling of merging, of becoming one, of existing completely inside another person, is not the peak of love. It is, in Jung's framework, the beginning of a psychological crisis that neither partner can name because it feels too good to question. He called it unconscious identity. Two people so fused that the boundary between self and other dissolves entirely. Not a union of two wholes, a merger of two incomplete people who have quietly stopped developing on their own. The relationship that results from this looks like devotion from the outside. But from the inside, one person, sometimes both, is slowly disappearing. Not dramatically, not all at once, just steadily, in the small daily surrenders that accumulate into a life that no longer quite fits. If you're watching this inside a relationship that has grown so total that you've lost the thread of who you were before it, or coming out of one that left you not heartbroken but hollow, unsure of what you want or who you are without the structure of that bond, Jung's framework is not about teaching you to love better. It's about something more uncomfortable than that. It's about the possibility that what you've been calling love has never required you to exist at all, and about what it would actually mean to show up to a relationship as someone whole, not as a half desperately looking for completion, but as a person complete enough to choose freely and clearly to share themselves with another. That distinction is everything, and it starts with understanding what you were actually feeling in those first months, because it wasn't what you think it was. Most people believe that the intensity of what they feel at the beginning of a relationship is proof of its depth. Jung would dismantle that assumption in a single move. What you feel in those early months, that overwhelming sense of recognition, the certainty that this person understands you like no one ever has, the way they seem to complete something you didn't know was missing, is not perception, it's projection. And the distinction matters more than almost anything else Jung ever wrote about human relationships. Every person carries inside them an unconscious image of the opposite. The man carries a feminine image, the woman a masculine one. Jung named these the Anima and the Animus. These are not preferences or ideals you consciously constructed. They are deep psychic structures, built from your earliest experiences, your parents' unlived lives, your wounds, your own undeveloped qualities, and they operate entirely beneath awareness. When someone in the world resembles that inner image closely enough, the unconscious responds with the full force of recognition, that electricity, that sense of coming home, that feeling that this person was made for you. They weren't. You were responding to yourself. This is where the dissolution begins. Not with sacrifice or compromise, but much earlier, in the very moment of falling. Because when you project the anima or animus onto a real person, you stop seeing them, you see the image, and you begin, unconsciously, to organize yourself around keeping that image intact. Your own needs, your own contradictions, your own developing self, these become inconveniences, threats to the feeling. So they get quietly set aside, first occasionally, then habitually, then permanently. What makes this so difficult to detect is that it mimics the best parts of love. The attentiveness, the selflessness, the willingness to bend. These look like virtue. They feel like virtue. But underneath them, something structural is happening. You are making yourself smaller so the projection can survive. You are trading your development for the maintenance of a feeling that was never about the other person to begin with. Notice, concretely, where this lives in you. The opinion you don't voice because you already know it will create friction. The interest you've quietly abandoned because it never fit the dynamic. The version of yourself that existed before this relationship. More restless, more particular, more fully yours, that you've stopped defending. These are not the casualties of compromise. They are the evidence of fusion. And fusion, Jung understood, is not intimacy. It is the unconscious outsourcing of your own wholeness to someone else. The projection, however, cannot hold forever. The person in front of you is real, which means they will eventually fail to carry the image you placed on them. And when that happens, the relationship reaches the most dangerous and most important moment it will ever face. That moment is what the next part is about. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. When the initial feeling settles, most people assume the relationship has simply matured. What has actually happened is that two psychological roles have quietly solidified, and neither person chose them consciously. Jung identified a pattern that runs beneath the surface of almost every long-term relationship. He called it the container and the contained. The contained is the partner who lives entirely within the relationship, whose identity, emotional life, and sense of self are held almost completely inside the bond. The container is the one who can't quite fit inside it, who feels, vaguely but persistently, that the relationship is too small for everything they are, that parts of themselves have nowhere to go. From the outside, these roles are almost invisible. The contained looks devoted. The container looks committed. What's actually happening is that one person has made the relationship the total horizon of their existence, and the other is slowly suffocating inside it. The contained doesn't experience this as dependency. They experience it as love, as proof of how seriously they take the relationship, how much they've invested, how deeply they feel. But the investment has a structure. The more they pour into the relationship, the less they develop outside of it. Their friendships thin, their individual pursuits fade. The question of who they are when they're not in this relationship becomes not just unanswered, but unasked. They have organized their entire psychological life around a single point, and called that devotion. The container, meanwhile, carries a different kind of suffering. They feel the pull toward the relationship, but also an obscure resistance they can't justify. A longing for something they can't name, a restlessness that looks like dissatisfaction, but is closer to incompleteness. They haven't dissolved into the relationship, but they haven't fully shown up to it either. Some part of them remains just outside, watching, unable to fully enter what's being offered. What Jung understood, and what makes this more than a personality typology, is that both roles are expressions of the same underlying problem: incomplete individuation. The contained has collapsed inward, outsourcing their development to the relationship. The container has fragmented outward, unable to integrate their complexity into genuine intimacy. Neither is more evolved than the other. Both are stuck. The practical weight of this is uncomfortable. Sit with which role you occupy, not the one you perform publicly, but the one that operates in you at 3 in the morning, when the relationship is quiet and you're alone with what it's actually costing you. If you are the contained, the question isn't how to love less. It's what in you has gone undeveloped for so long that another person became the only place it could live. If you are the container, the question isn't how to need less. It's what you are so afraid of losing in yourself that full presence feels like a threat. Both answers point to the same place. The self that stopped growing the moment the relationship became more important than the person inside it. And that self doesn't disappear. It waits, it gathers pressure, until something in the relationship forces it back to the surface, usually in a way neither partner is prepared for. That rupture is what comes next. There is a moment in long relationships that almost no one has language for. Not a fight, not a betrayal, something quieter and more disorienting. A morning where you look at the person across the table and feel, beneath the familiarity, a strange distance. Like the frequency changed and no one told you. You still know everything about them, but something that used to feel inevitable now feels like a choice you're not sure you're making. Most people interpret this as the relationship dying. Jung would say it is the relationship waking up. What has happened in his framework is that the projection has finally loosened its grip. The image you placed over this person, the anima, the animus, the unconscious portrait assembled from your wounds and your unlived life, has begun to slip. And the person underneath it, the actual human being you've been living beside, is becoming visible for the first time. This should be a moment of arrival. Instead, for most people, it feels like loss. That confusion is not accidental. The projection organized everything. It shaped how you saw the relationship, how you saw yourself inside it, what you were willing to become to sustain it. When it breaks, the structure built around it breaks too. Suddenly, the compromises you made don't feel like love. They feel like debt. The self you set aside doesn't feel like sacrifice. It feels like an absence that has been accumulating interest for years. Jung observed that this crisis tends to arrive in the middle of life, not as a fixed age, but as a psychological threshold. The first half of life is driven by expansion, building, merging, securing. The second half demands something different. It demands that you become more specifically yourself, that you stop outsourcing your development to roles, relationships, or the expectations of others. And a relationship built on projection and fusion will always resist this demand, because the version of you that the relationship requires is the version that stopped growing. This is where the danger is sharpest, because the two most common responses to this crisis are the two most destructive ones. The first is to flee, to read the discomfort as evidence that the relationship was wrong, find someone new, and restart the projection cycle with a cleaner surface. The second is to suppress, to push the discomfort down, recommit to the familiar dynamic, and slowly harden into a life that fits like a room that stopped being yours years ago. What Jung points toward is a third possibility, the one almost no one takes, because it requires something neither flight nor suppression demands: presence. The willingness to stay inside the discomfort long enough to let the projection fully dissolve, to meet the actual person on the other side of it, and to ask, seriously without the answer predetermined, whether two real people, not two images, want to build something together. That question is not romantic. It is not the love story you were sold, but it is the only version of love that doesn't require you to disappear in order to sustain it. And understanding what it actually demands, what it means to be fully present in a relationship as a whole person rather than a dissolved one, is exactly where we're going next. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. The moment you suggest that a person needs to maintain their own self inside a relationship, someone always misreads it. They hear, "Be more independent, pull back, love less." That misreading is itself part of the problem. because it reveals how completely we've collapsed the distinction between closeness and fusion, between love and disappearance. Jung's concept of individuation is not a prescription for emotional distance. It is the ongoing process of becoming more fully and specifically yourself, of integrating the parts of your psyche that have been split off, suppressed, or outsourced to others. In the context of a relationship, it means that your development as a person does not pause because you are partnered. It means that the relationship is not the destination. It is the terrain in which the work continues. This distinction has consequences that are immediate and uncomfortable. Your values are not negotiable furniture to be rearranged for someone else's comfort. Your time, spent alone, with friends, in pursuits that have nothing to do with your partner, is not selfishness. It is the maintenance of the self that makes you someone worth being in relationship with. The interests you abandoned, the friendships you let thin, the opinions you stopped voicing. These were not the price of love. They were the symptoms of fusion. And their absence doesn't make the relationship more intimate. It makes it more fragile, because it is now built on a person who no longer fully exists. What individuation inside a relationship actually looks like is not glamorous. It looks like telling the truth when silence would be easier. It looks like maintaining a friendship your partner doesn't particularly like, because that friendship is part of who you are. It looks like having an internal life, desires, doubts, directions that you share selectively and honestly, rather than either hiding entirely or dissolving into the relationship for approval. It looks like being willing to be seen as someone specific, with edges, rather than as the endlessly accommodating surface that fusion requires. The fear underneath all of this is worth naming directly. If I am fully myself, they might not want me. That fear is real. But notice what it assumes, that the relationship's survival depends on your self-erasure, that you are more lovable as an absence than as a presence. That is not love's requirement. That is the projection's requirement. A relationship that can only survive your disappearance was never holding you. It was holding the space where you used to be. Two people who are each actively individuating, each committed to their own development, each willing to be seen without the armor of the persona, create something that fusion never can. Genuine contact. Not the comfort of merging, but the more demanding and more sustaining experience of being known, not as the image someone needed, as the person you actually are. The difference between these two things, between being needed and being known, is the whole distance between a relationship that consumes you and one that sustains you. And in the next part, we arrive at what it actually means to love from that place, not as a half looking for completion, but as someone whole, choosing to share it. There is a story we inherited about love, and it goes like this. Somewhere out there is a person who completes you, your missing half, the one who fills what's empty and softens what's hard, and when you find them, you'll finally feel whole. Jung would call this the most dangerous myth we tell ourselves about relationships. Not because love isn't real, but because this version of it makes your wholeness someone else's responsibility. And any relationship built on that foundation is not a partnership. It is a hostage situation dressed in romantic language. The idea that another person completes you presupposes that you are, by yourself, insufficient. And that presupposition does not stay abstract. It shapes every interaction. It makes love conditional on the other person continuing to fill the gap, which means the moment they fail to, the relationship feels like it's collapsing. It makes vulnerability terrifying, because if they truly see you and still find you lacking, there's nothing left. It makes the loss of the relationship feel like the loss of yourself, because in a very real sense, you placed yourself inside them for safekeeping, and now you can't find where you left it. What Jung points toward is the opposite architecture entirely, not two halves producing a whole, two wholes choosing each other. repeatedly, consciously, without the coercion of need. This is not a colder version of love. It is a more demanding one. Because loving from wholeness means showing up as someone specific, with your contradictions intact, your edges unsmoothed, your inner life genuinely your own. It means being visible in ways that fusion never required, because fusion doesn't need you to be seen. It only needs you to be present enough to hold the projection. Real love requires something harder than presence. It requires honesty about who you actually are. Not the version curated for approval, not the self compressed into whatever shape the relationship rewards, but the fuller, more inconvenient, more alive version that you've been quietly editing out. The one with opinions that create friction. The one with needs that can't always be timed conveniently. The one that takes up space. Taking up space in a relationship is not selfishness. It is the precondition for contact. You cannot genuinely connect with someone who has disappeared. You can only consume the absence they left behind. And when you are the one who has disappeared, when you have made yourself so accommodating, so frictionless, so entirely oriented around the other person that your own contours have dissolved, you have not given them more of you. You have given them less. You have given them a surface. And surfaces, no matter how devoted, cannot be loved. They can only be used. The deepest thing you can offer another person is not your sacrifice. It is your presence, full, specific, and real. The willingness to be known rather than needed. To remain someone, even when the relationship exerts its gravitational pull toward no one in particular. That is what the next part asks of you. Not as a technique, not as a relationship strategy, but as the only honest answer to a question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Who are you? When love is no longer asking you to disappear. Here is the hardest thing this video has been building toward, and it will not be softened. Most people have never been in a relationship. They have been in a merging. Two unconscious processes running parallel, organized around mutual projection and the quiet, continuous erasure of whoever each person was before they arrived. It looked like love. It had all the feelings of love. But at its center, where two distinct people should have been, there was only a shared disappearance. This is not a condemnation. It is a description of what happens when no one teaches you that love is not a place you dissolve into. It is a practice you show up to as someone. Jung's entire framework points toward a single, uncomfortable truth. You cannot give what you have abandoned. The self you set aside, the development you postponed, the voice you quieted to keep the peace. These are not sacrifices that make love more possible. They are the precise things that make it impossible. Because love, in the deepest sense Jung meant it, is not the meeting of two needs. It is the meeting of two consciousnesses. And you cannot meet someone if you are not there. If you are in a relationship right now, the question is not whether you love your partner. The question is whether you exist fully inside that relationship, or whether you have been slowly trading yourself for the safety of their approval, the comfort of the merger, the relief of not having to be someone specific anymore. That trade feels like devotion. It is closer to disappearance. And if you are coming out of a relationship that left you hollow, not heartbroken, but emptied, unsure of what you want or who you are without the structure of that bond, then what you are grieving is not just the person. You are grieving the self you handed over, piece by piece, in exchange for the feeling of belonging. That grief is legitimate, but it is also information. It is telling you exactly where the work is. The work is not learning to love better. It is learning to remain, to stay present as yourself, particular, inconvenient, alive, even when the relationship exerts its pull toward fusion. To choose the harder intimacy of being known over the easier comfort of being needed. To stop asking love to complete you, and to start asking yourself what it would mean to arrive at a relationship already whole. That is not a destination. It is a daily decision. Some days you will make it. Many days, you won't. But the direction matters more than the consistency, because a relationship in which both people are genuinely trying to remain themselves, to see each other clearly, to love without the distortion of projection, is not a perfect relationship. It is something rarer and more sustaining than that. It is a real one. If something in this video disturbed something you'd rather leave undisturbed, leave a comment. Not about the video, about what it named. That's where the conversation worth having actually begins. And if this is the kind of question you can't stop sitting with, the ones about who you are underneath everything you've agreed to become, there's more waiting for you. The work doesn't end here. If you felt it today, you already know that.